So when an athlete's squatting, obviously we're looking at hip, knee, and ankle mobility if we're having trouble getting into positions that we want. When we think about the ankle, we obviously first think about ankle dorsiflexion. So if Jordan turns to the side and squats, we're going to obviously see an anterior translation of his knee or his ankles going into dorsiflexion. But I think we need to appreciate that there is more than just dorsiflexion happening below the knee. So if we watch from the front, what are we going to see? As Jordan descends down into the squat, one of the points of performance we want to see with a squat is that the knees stay over the middle of the foot. So he's having to actively drive his knees out as he descends. So where do we get that active drive out from? As he's doing these reps, I want you to appreciate that as he descends down, he's getting some lateral motion from the ankle, as well as he goes down. If we kind of watch the arch of his foot, that's kind of staying built up and actively usually supinating a little bit more for most people when they emphasize that knee drive out. So we need to assess below the knee more than just ankle dorsiflexion, and that's where the lateral tibial glide and the table test will come in handy. So for the table test, which is going to be our first way of assessing lateral mobility below the knee, I'm going to take my index finger and come down the medial side of Jordan's first metatarsal, and I'll find the joint line between where the medial edge of that metatarsal meets the medial cuneiform. So I find that joint line, and I'm then going to come just below it. So I am distal to the joint, and then I grab the forefoot below that point. My other hand comes on top and reinforces that is on top, not above, so that everything is staying below that joint line. Then I neutralize his foot. I bring his foot up to where it's facing vertical, and then I'm going to have Jordan bend his knee until his foot is flat on the ground. And I'm going to keep this forefoot planted down on the ground, and he's going to drop his knee out to the side. And Jordan's going to keep going until he gets to a really firm infill, which for me is happening about right there. And so I think you can appreciate that we're really looking at just the overall ability of the lower extremity to drive out. We're seeing a couple things here. We're seeing some lateral ankle movement at the rear foot. We're also seeing some supination and movement here at the midfoot. What I ideally want to see is a 30-degree angle or more relative to vertical happening here. And then I want to compare that side to side and make sure we have symmetry side to side. But again, it's going to look at our midfoot, at our rear foot, as well as a little bit of hip abduction. And that'll give us some insight into what's going on in terms of his lower extremity mobility. But we may want to get a little bit more specific with that. And so that's where we may want to break out between having mobility limitations in the midfoot or the rear foot. And the way we're going to do that is now by doing lateral tibial glide. So I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to make this little symbol where I have my third through fifth digits together. Those digits go below the arch of the foot. Pistol grip with the other two comes just below the medial and lateral malleoli. And I have a very firm grip here. I'm going to bend Jordan's knee up to where his foot's flat on the ground. I'm supporting the arch of the foot, and I'm locking down his foot on the ground. And then I'm going to passively see how much lateral motion I can get here. And so now I've locked the midfoot. I'm blocking that with my hand, and I'm looking to get a 20-ish degree angle. And between those two tests, I kind of now know, do I want to spend more time working midfoot and rear foot, or do I need to be more focused on one of those areas versus the other to help improve that individual's ability to drive their knee laterally? Typically for me, if it's a rear foot limitation, I'm doing our typical talocrural joint mobilizations of different sorts. Or if it's more of the midfoot situation, I'll drop that leg down and I'll almost come into like a inversion stress test that we would use in somebody that has an ankle sprain. And then I just simply mobilize down the lateral shin. So I'm sitting somewhere over the fibula. I'm mobilizing the soft tissues, joints, etc. in this area. I'm not being specific to anything, but just slowly sinking down into that typically helps to open up that lateral ankle mobility so that we have improved squat mechanics.